Good morning. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl. I'm broadcasting to you from beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana. And today I'm here with my good friends Karen and Angel, Catherine and Dan. And I think Lori's going to jump on here in just a moment. But before we get going, I wanted to just give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. And for those of you who are watching, you want to just give us a like on Facebook there, or if you're watching this as a recording, like us on YouTube. If you want to be updated each time we upload a new video, then subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you want to participate with us, then all you have to do is jump into our Facebook group, which you can find by going to mindsetmasterycollective.com, and you'll find a link to get into our Facebook group. So with that, guys, what are we talking about today? Oh, you know what? Go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then I'll tell you what we're talking about today. We'll keep that a mystery for a moment.
I'm Angel Studebaker.
In Mesa, Arizona. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Angel Studebaker down here in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's okay, Karen.
Dan Sislik in Las Vegas, Nevada. I think the only place that's kind of warm and compared to the rest of the country.
Hello, it's Catherine in Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. I just saw your comment, Catherine, and you're probably right. I didn't realize. But that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We've been talking about the book Love, Life, God by Jarrad Hewett. And today I think we're going to talk a little bit more about chapter 5. Last week we finished up chapter 4 discussing the concept of having a new thought, and moved into this idea that is expressed in chapter 5 of the difference between ascension and expansion, and why we wanted to kind of talk about that. But I know even though we kind of started talking about the difference between expansion and ascension, we really didn't get so much on the concept of why they were bringing that up in the first place. Well, I mean, I think we kind of did a little bit, but I wanted to just kind of read a little bit from the beginning of chapter 5 and talk a little bit about this difference and why they're even talking about it. So at the beginning of the chapter, it says there's a common misconception about consciousness that we wish to address. To call it a misconception would be false. However, we wish to correct the notion that ascension is a movement of upward motion or energy. We wish to correct the belief that consciousness is moving from low to high. The idea of ascension as a ladder is not correct, a holdover perhaps from Jacob's ladder in the Bible. A more accurate way to explain the process would be to call it expansion. And then Jarrad says, I've thought of ascension as transcending this plane. And I don't know if you're aware or not, but those of you who are watching who haven't been reading this book, there's kind of this conversation style in the book where Jarrad, the author, is kind of talking to the God part of himself or the spiritual part of himself. And so they're having this kind of conversation. And so this first part is the God self saying what they just said, and then Jarrad's kind of saying the comment of, I've always thought of ascension as transcending this plane. And then the spiritual self is saying, well, prepare to let go of that story and have a new thought. And they're saying, we hope to expand more, but the mind is a start. We'd like you to move out of ascension and into expansion with regard to the language of consciousness. For a long time, many have held to a particular story of ascension, and we think it would be easier to let go of that definition by replacing the term. With regard to their conception, ascension has been considered a journey to God. God here being a destination, whether physical or spiritual. In truth, that which you call God, you already are. By letting go of definitions, again, becoming a blank page, you can allow all that you are to be remembered. such definitions and stories have been holding closed the doorway to these memories, and in letting go, you are inviting the knowledge of all that you are to come forth and make itself known to the conscious mind, being an individual or a collective. And Jarrad says, in other words, I'm not trying to get anywhere with regard to spiritual or even physical heaven. And they're saying precisely, you are already here and want you to remember what you've forgotten. So it's this kind of idea of trying to get us to think differently on this whole idea of spirituality and who we are and what we're trying to accomplish here, kind of in this plane of existence. And it's kind of trying to tell us that, we've got this idea wrong, that we're trying to get somewhere. We've always thought that we're trying to get from where we are to some higher level of awareness or higher level of existence, or that we're trying to get from earth to heaven, or that we're trying to get from us to God, or something along that lines. And they're trying to tell us that we already are God, and so there's no place to get to. And so I thought that was just a really interesting way of looking at it. And I'm wondering what you guys think about this whole concept of, we're already here. We don't need to get someplace else, and that we just need to change the way that we look at what we are. What do you guys think about that?
Well, just a little beyond that, he talks about a stalled consciousness and how we have that. We've had that for a long time, and it really resonated with me that I had a stalled consciousness, because the several books that we have read most recently, including this one, really opens up the notion that we, for one thing, we know a lot more than we thought we knew. I remember being taught that this earth would be, at some time in the future, a glass ball. It would be something that would be beyond our idea of how beautiful it could be and how many of us could be on it. Everybody who's lived on the earth. That when I learned that, I learned it in reference to people who would qualify to do that. A religious notion. And I think about trying to compare myself with the ideas I've had all along to the ideas that I'm expanding my consciousness to with reading this book and discussing it. I'm really enjoying the idea of countering a stalled consciousness to a consciousness that's able to allow creation of what I really want.
I'm gonna jump out because I think you all know some of my views, philosophies, and thoughts and stuff on this. But um, a little bit of this kind of resonates with me, but I'm s- I think I'm still having some troubles with the idea that um, where he talks about I'm not trying to get anywhere with regard to a spiritual, even a physical heaven. And he says precisely, you're already here. We say here because you can never be there, and with there being away or in another place from that which you presently occupy. So I I get the idea of what he's saying and what he's understanding, but and maybe this is going back to working on that expansion ascension area, because when look out and I see, I s- to me I see a lot that I feel is not, I don't like saying it this way, but in my mind, correct in the world, or and that might be because of where I'm, and that might be a limitation or something. And I do believe that there is something better out there, and that we, I don't want to say like through traveling or something like that, but we've not established that place where everything is operating at the highest vibrational level, where it's all freely, I guess, freely flowing, or freely, and going back to that a little bit of that stall of consciousness thought. 'Cause I haven't really gotten into this chapter yet. I'm still trying to catch up because of things going on the last couple of weeks of my life. Um, but I'm still because, and maybe because I'm still looking at what I've walked through in the journey of my life, and seeing so much disassociation, I guess, from what is perceivably good, or how we, it's kind of hard to say, in a way that allows me to, kind of go with that flow and that thought. And because I do believe that a lot of things that, we are vibrational, and that, there's a lot of things that are vibrational. If you break things down to their basic thing, even if you look at, you know, trees and things and wood and stuff and items, you'll see that vibration going. But some cases it's slower and others are faster and things like that. We've studied those things before in other books that we've gone through. So to me, I still think, and maybe that's part of the, where the thought process or whatever moves into opening up more to allowing that in, and that might be that stalled consciousness that a lot of us are at, I guess. Maybe I hope I made kind of sense on what I said. And it's, it's kind of hard to put it exactly into words what I was thinking.
I wanted to read this next section in here and kind of talk about this a little bit, because I feel like this is where we get stuck a little bit in some respects, or some of us do. And talking about reading the Bible, and did Jesus not say that what you call the kingdom is within? This teaching was correct. The Gnostic Gospels went a step further in quoting Jesus as saying that you could split open a piece of wood and therein also find the kingdom. This is equivalent of what we have said. Everything is energy. That which you have called God is energy and is the source of everything. It is everything. Yes, you can journey to another dimension upon your perceived death in this reality, and you can reincarnate whenever and wherever you may choose. But wherever you go, there you are, as they say. And what you are is God. So there is no heavenly destination. There is no there to get to. That is a story which has perpetuated a stalled consciousness. We're asking to release that and experience the glory of that which we are, that which you are. And the biggest thing that kind of connects with me in this is that the whole idea of the kingdom within. And in my experience, the Christian teaching has always kind of given us this idea that we need to ask God to come into us, or we need to ask for, to be reborn. And I feel like that's what it's trying to get at, is for us to realize that we already are an aspect of God, and that we just have to realize that. And that when we do, we begin to trust in God and allow for Him to work through our lives. And but yet at the same time, we have this idea that we're separate from God. And they're trying to tell us that we aren't separate. We've never been separate. We've always been a part of God, and that we've created this illusion of separation. And that is why we struggle in this world, is because we're trying to get from here to there, when in reality, all we have to do is recognize that we're already here. We're already an aspect of God, and that God is already inside of us, and we just have to recognize that. And that's kind of where I've like, that really was what helped me come back to God from being so anti-God for so many years. Is this just because of the whole idea that we're separate, it creates so much negativity, and it creates so much anger and frustration, and this idea that, God's going to smite us if we don't act and be and do a certain way. And it wasn't until I realized that, what they're trying to say here, that the kingdom is within. We are already here. We're already a part of God. And so we don't have to do a certain thing or act a certain way in order for that to be true. We just have to recognize it in the first place and trust in it, and allow it to work through us in whatever way. And that, it's interesting, because we kind of get this idea that we're not good enough. And I always railed against that idea that, it can't be true. That doesn't feel right. It never felt right to be told that I'm not good enough, or I'm not right, or I'm not whatever. And I'm like, how can there be so much diversity in this whole world, and so many different points of view, and we all think that we're the right one and nobody else is right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. When we look at one religion to another spiritual way to another one, we can't all be wrong, and we can't, can we all be right though? We can't just be it. We can't just have one that is right and everybody else is wrong. I mean, how does that make sense? So I don't know, what you guys jump out.
To me, I have been quite a bit, and all I can think is that God is so big and expansive that every idea is part of God. And so we have to accept each other everywhere all the time, because He's so expansive. Does that boggle your mind? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like that, when they're trying to say that, we are God, and that we are, we've created the illusion of separation, is that we've come here onto the earth and become this human form simply for the experience of it. And that's the whole purpose, is so that we can see things from different perspectives, and experience it in a different way. And of course, if we recognize that we're all a part of it, then maybe we wouldn't be so frustrated and angry with each other when we disagree on stuff, and just to recognize, okay, I'm here, and this is the experience that I came here to experience, but I see that all of you have chosen to experience it from a completely different perspective, and that's true for you too, and that it can be true for all of us. And when we can allow for that, I mean, I feel like that's where we're trying to move to, is this kind of an allowance of realizing that we're all here to have just different experiences, and it's all okay. The problem is that we all get in each other's business and we all try and tell each other what we think they're supposed to do. And then we get upset when the other person doesn't do what we think they should do. And then we have all of this, anger and frustration at one another because we have different ideas of how things should be. And, way back in, thousands of years ago when there was only a few humans on the earth, it was easier because we didn't have to work around each other much, when we're just close to each other. And now we're like all crammed together and we have to figure out how to get along when we all have different ideas of what getting along even means. So it's interesting. But I wanted to kind of move to this next section where it's talking about this, let's see here. So it says consciousness is expanding. However, we have said the thoughts of who you are, your ability to own your creatorship and feel good about it, have seemingly stuck in denial. You've been in denial of your godhood. As you refuse to know that you are God, you place your creatorship outside yourself and placed it in the hands of another. Some placed it in the hands of religion, while others denied the very existence of any such force at all. Others gave the creatorship away to the belief that they were living as a consequences of deeds done in other lives, be it past or future. All of these ways in which you have denied yourself. In the state of denial, consciousness experienced all of the wonderful creations and experiences that come as a result of such belief. These experiences have been wonderful, a great learning for you to have created them. They are experiences that have called forth expansion into knowing. We could add that experiencing your own godhood was a thought that was unavailable to most of the collective consciousness until recently. And one thought that I had while I was reading through that is, this idea of being stuck because of beliefs, and how can we grow if the only way to get to heaven is by dying? That's it. I think that I don't know. It's funny how we write notes and we're like, how can we grow if we can only get there by dying? It seems crazy, right? How can we, if the only way to see something different is by dying? That doesn't make any sense, does it? I mean, we've got to be able to see it differently while we're here. Otherwise, what's the point? Right? I don't know. And then I also wrote a note about we've created the crap so that we could realize how absurd it is. Does that mean it'll get even more crazy until we wake up? Okay, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I wanted to hear I'm gonna throw out and look at it from, I think, on maybe the backside of it. If, and it's gonna sound weird the way I say it, because it's even sounding weird in my head, but I'm gonna, if the consciousness or that what we're ascribing to become or get back to is what we're part of, and that we are still a part of it, but why is there the need then to go through what we go through and come to this, go through this experience of what we're all going through? If I think if we get back into the full collectiveness, we already know that it's all. So to me, what is the point in going through this if in essence we're already a part of it, and for the most part, based on what the book's saying, is trying to reconnect to that original whatever. I'm just trying to understand, why do we even have to go through all this if that's what we're trying to go back to, get back connected, or replug into, or for it. I don't understand the need to go through this then.
All I can think is it's everyone has their own free will, and somehow we learn from it so we can be better, if there's such a thing. That's comparison, a polar opposite, a better or worse, or and how we learn from it. It's free will, dang it. It's crazy.
I think that that's the question right there, Dan, is why would we put ourselves through this? And but I also have to say, okay, if we came here with this intention of putting ourselves through this, wouldn't the whole point be for us to go through it so that we can potentially realize that we're doing it to ourselves and that we have the power to not put ourselves through it, if you will? I don't know. I mean, uh, it's a weird. The whole thing it seems so crazy, and and if we created this idea of separation just to torment ourselves, and then so that we could figure it out, I don't know. I mean, it. And yet, what if we take that whole idea of away, that we it's not as crazy as we think it is, and this whole idea of everything being crazy is just, that's what we've been telling ourselves, is that everything is wrong, and so it feels crazy. Whereas if we just say, okay, what if we're saying everything that is going on is right, and that it's just simply for the experience of experiencing the human existence? How does that change our perspective of, you know, if, let's just say, for instance, we are this all knowing, all everything being, and we already know everything, we already understand everything, but we don't know what that feels like from an individual perspective. And that's why we came here, is we came here just to see what it looks like from the point of view of, Samantha Studebaker Carl, or Catherine Clement, or Dan Sissick, or Lori, or Karen, or Angel. We come here for this. What does it look like from Lori's perspective? What does it look like from Dan's perspective? And how does that feel? And uh, because how else? I mean, it's just like the difference between hot and cold. How do we know what cold even is if we have never experienced hot? If it was always just cold all the time, everywhere, in every way, shape, or form, we would not know the difference. It just would be. It would just be cold, and we wouldn't even know it. We'd just exist. And so this whole idea of coming here in this human form is to experience the contrast between the different things so that we can fully understand them. I don't know. That's kind of my thought on it. And so then that makes me go, okay, well, if that's the case, then, what else can I experience in this existence that I haven't even realized is possible? Um, is there more to it that I can experience? And that's kind of what I'm wondering, is that they're trying to tell us to, expand our mind, and the idea that there's even more to it than we even realize, and that we can experience it. We just have to let go of these limiting beliefs in order to do so. I don't know.
I'm going to go back again, though. So, going back to the way it was talking, how we're God, and we're all knowing we are, and in that, so if we are a part of that and understand that, and we're all connected together, so we would have that understanding and have that there, where it's all kind of streamed together for everybody. To me, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, we would know and understand them because we're all connected, and we all have that connectivity because we're all at that same level. And again, why do we need to come? That's that's I guess I'm on that Ferris wheel still, or that gerbil wheel of going around. Why is there that real need then, if we're already there and already connected and all, the conscious, the book says, God, and we all, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one.
Well, he's really talking about expansion in this chapter. And he's talking about how we deny that we're God. We deny that we create our lives, that we create who we are. And that's something that we can do. And apparently most all of us do that. But as we do that, we're still experiencing the experiences that can come along in that state. And we're expanding from those experiences. And then he also admits that even the thoughts that we've had as we've gone through this book and as we've learned these things have not been available to the general what's it called, the consciousness that's talking about all consciousness, pardon me. And so it goes back in my mind to expansion. We're going to expand whether we understand it or not. But if we can allow ourselves to understand that we are God, that we are creating, then the expansion can be greater. What I'm kind of wondering about here is the people whose lives, in my opinion, are primarily evil. All about revenge, all about killing, all about destroying, all that kind of stuff. Now, I do recognize that there's still expansion in that. But as far as I'm concerned, if I'm wondering about what the point of all that is what is the point of all of that? And yet, if you watch television programs, there's that one Law and Order one where that really, I think he's one of the ugliest men I've ever seen in my life. He marries this woman and he continues to be a serial killer for an untold number of women. And it's clear that he feels like he's becoming more powerful, that he's becoming more intelligent, that all this kind of stuff. I suppose we can learn from anything, and we can learn at any level, and we can expand. Referring to the chapter in the Bible about the kingdom is within. I think that there's probably a leaning for some of us more towards what we think, what we feel is good expansion, desirable experiences. I don't think it's a waste, for example. I don't think it's pointless that we get together once a week on Saturdays and we share our ideas about the things that we read. This is a difficult chapter. I remember when you talked to us a couple of weeks ago, Samantha, and you said, I want to hurry and get to chapter 5 because it gets really deep. And it really is really deep.
I'm going to jump out and say I'm curious as to what Catherine has to say because um, she always seems to have a side that can, for me, help me understand some things, it seems. And so I'd love to hear what you have to say, Catherine.
I don't know if you'll want to hear what I have to say. um, I think just the way that we come into this world, we're born into a hierarchy because we're the baby, and we're so helpless, that we have to rely on the adults to take care of us and stuff. And so we immediately come into this world as, I'm this little thing, and there's all these people that are above me and more powerful than me, and we're immediately born into separation. And we're not taught as kids that we are eternal souls that have lived probably millions of lifetime experiences and have all this knowledge. That's not what we're told. We're told that we're little kids and we need to just sit down and shut up and do what we're told, basically. We're not. And then on top of that, we're told that heaven is this place where the angels sing and everything is peaceful and calm and loving, and everybody has everything that they need, and then nobody argues, and everything is just perfect. And this is what we're told, and it's indoctrined into us, and we buy into it. And then we start comparing everything in life against that, and we make ourselves freaking miserable. And then we start judging ourselves, and so you can see where this going. Like, it just keeps snowballing into more and more judgment. Meanwhile, people find heaven every day, multiple times a day, in the taste of a strawberry, or in my case, a few moments from the relief of pain. There are things that people consider bad that drive us towards heaven, the experience of heaven, which is always within us. We're constantly wanting everything outside of us to change. There right now there's so much political unrest and things like that. Well, you know what it taught me? Because 97% of my friends have different beliefs on politics than I do. So what it taught me is that there's really, really good people out there with different beliefs, and it's all okay. Just because we don't believe the same thing doesn't make anybody better or worse. And you brought up serial killers, which made me think of Samantha bringing up the show Dexter. Well, if you haven't seen Dexter's this crazy show about this. He's I, I I haven't watched it in a long, long time. I think he's like a blood splatter analyst or something. Like, he's sort of a cop, but he examines crime scenes. And he himself, he goes to these crime scenes of these serial killers, but he himself is a serial killer, but he only kills the serial killers that are out there killing. So now let's think of this through. If you're only killing somebody who's out there killing other people, is that okay? So I think, and this is why I've always had the belief, because I'm like you, Samantha, when I hear these when I, and even when I was a little kid, that's why I got my butt beat so many times. When I was, even as a little kid, and I was hearing these stories that people were telling me about how this behavior's good and this behavior's bad, and this person's good and this person's bad, and this is this and then, and I'm like, no, that doesn't feel right. because we are perfect beings all the time. And even though it doesn't make sense, and because we're spirit primarily, but we're here as humans, and humans are animals, and animals, in my mind, the animals that I see and spend time with are much more balanced than we are as humans. I think kind of combining the two somehow uh, complicates things, but I think the reason it complicates things is because of all these stories that we've been told that we buy into, that we then form judgments about. That when you judge somebody, and I see this happen a lot, when you judge, I mean, I'm not just saying other people judge, I judge. When I judge something, it immediately puts a barrier between me and whatever that is. I'm less willing to have a conversation with the, like, if it's a person maybe that I have a certain judgment about, I would be much more or less likely to pick up the phone and start a conversation with them than I would somebody that I agree with about something, right? Because I don't like tension. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like arguing with people, or um that's not heaven like. It's screwing up my zen. I want to stay in my zen. So we we make ourselves miserable, you guys, and everything is always focused on changing the outside. Like right now, the whole spiritual community is all about, we have to raise the vibration of the planet to the fifth dimensional Christ consciousness. Well, that shit is already here, you guys. We never had to do that. And people just need to stop putting that separation. And it doesn't matter what you call it, whether you call it religion or spirituality or judgment or whatever, it's still the same thing. It's just separation. And we need to stop that, because it is driving us crazy. I mean, if you think about it, God is really a multiple personality patient. I mean, God, like when I think of God, I think God is all of us together. That's God, and maybe that's heaven. But the point is, it's not there because it always is, because God is in us. We are part of God, we're an expression of God, so we can't separate from God. And even when we do things that as humans we judge to be incomprehensible and evil, um, there are things that drove that action, which is why I have always believed that there's no judgment from God. We judge ourselves, and we certainly judge other people, but I don't believe God judges us, because God understands all those things that drove somebody to do that thing. If you steal, it says thou shalt not steal, but if you steal because your children are starving, is that real? Is God going to put you in hell for that? Come on. Like, we do this shit to ourselves, you guys. That's it.
I love everything you just said there, Catherine. But Dan, I had a thought when you were talking of, if God knows everything, why do we need to be here? What's the point? Or and my thought was, maybe God only knows everything because we are here, because we are these individuals. Like, if God is everything, and God is all of creation, all of existence, all of everything, and all knowing, omnipotent, blah, 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 all of those things that we say that he is, or it is it not because of all of everything? It's like the catch-22. You can't have one without the other, the egg or God, the egg of the chicken, right? So you can't have God without everything. They can't have everything without God, because we're all the same. And so all of this that we are experiencing is God knowing itself from every perspective and every way. And that's how we can be everywhere, or God can be everywhere and know everything, is by virtue of everywhere and everything. So it made me think, because further in this chapter, it's talking about everything exists dimensionally in time. All of it exists in its potentialities in this moment. It exists right now, right here, right everywhere. And it talks about going down into the atomic or molecular level. Like, we look down small enough, we're all the same it's not even matter, it's that we're all the same energy, and that there is just this illusion of separation because of we don't even fully understand it, how it even makes sense, because we look down small enough, there is no matter, it's just space. And so, but then if we look up big enough, there is just space, and so it's like, it's unfathomable, this idea of the small versus the large, and that it's just this like circle of everything and everywhere. I don't know, it was just a thought that came across in my head of, what if we are the thought, and that's how God knows everything, is through all of us, it's all at the same time. Not that time's even a thing, it's only even time is an illusion. We talked about that in one of the previous books, is this idea of time being an illusion, and that the only thing that this whole lineal experience is an illusion. I was watching a TV show not too long ago. I don't know, you guys may have seen it, Deep Space Nine, and it's a Star Trek one. And at one point in the first season, they go into this wormhole, this organic wormhole, I guess, But anyway, they discover this life form that does not experience linear time; it just exists. And it was trying to understand this concept of linear time, and it made me think about just all of space, and that space, there is no time; it just exists. And that we experience it, we only experience it because our human self is limited in how long it can exist, as this individual. And if we weren't human, we wouldn't have that. We would just be. I don't know. My thoughts are all over the place on this. So mostly it's just like dig deeper and deeper and see where the thought goes.
That rabbit hole gets deeper and deeper. But I was going to bring something out. When you were talking about bringing things down to the molecular and the particle and that, essentially we're all the same. So if at that level, how do all the molecules, particles, and all that, and atoms and all that, how does that then, if based on what you were saying that we're basically all the same, how do we then bring all those together? And I guess I think I'm answering my question is, I guess thought would be the part behind that puts all that together, that makes us who we are as individuals then.
Thought and energy, maybe.
Maybe we are the thought.
Well, because last night I was trying to get caught up, and I remember, what part was it? I need to go back to it. Where was it? I just was at it. but it talks about thought and vibrations, and it was just there. Yeah, I just had it too, and I should have kept my finger there. Mm, now I can't find it, but it hit right on kind of what I was asking, but I still had questions about it. Mm, okay, that sucks. Now that I can't find it, but it just kind of, when you were saying that, it kind of, I'm still going back to the whole thing, and how coming in. I'm still trying to understand why we would need to, because the earth and people and humans have been around for however long they've been around. I have my thoughts on that. I honestly don't know how right my thoughts are, and I'm not going to say they're right. Um, but if people have lived and experienced and been a part of the whole overall, I'm going to say collective. Makes me think of the Borg and the collective, and I'm that but connected like that. Why ha, is what is the need to come and experience? I guess maybe is more my question.
I finally got a I don't know how to describe it, but a solid copy of the book. I got a used book, and on page 90 and 91, I just really love this here. It says, at different points of this process, which is basically the process that Samantha, Dan, Catherine have kind of been talking about here, you have focused on certain aspects of the energy where you expect to be. Using action of the one constant module, the answer from one of the layers. Remember, everything is happening at once. And then this next paragraph is, I think, really fabulous. Um, but then the question comes up, like the Mandelbrot set, and I did not recall exactly what the Mandelbrot set was. Looked it up this morning, just found it absolutely fascinating because I loved learning about fractal geometry, because that was essentially discovered in my lifetime. And fractals are beautiful and all different and go forever and all this kind of stuff. But I hope that we will maybe finish this out of chapter 5 next week, because I think that there's so much for us to gain. And I wish I could remember this quote about, uh, you know, reading things. You can read them and, pass on by them, or you can take the time and the struggle to learn and understand what they're about. And I think that that's something that we do with these books, and it's something that I'm learning the value of, taking the time to go deep and really grasp what it is that we're trying to study. It's top of the hour here for me, and I haven't had breakfast and I'm anxious to get going. So I'll remind you again that I love you all, and it's so fun for us to get together. We can have others join us. I wish they would.
All right, guys. Yeah, since we are at the top of the hour, final thoughts before we wrap up for today. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to just give my theory on Dan's question, which is why would we do this to ourselves? And I think we do it because we're eternal and we have to do something. And just floating around in pure oneness evidently gets boring, and we decide we want a little adventure. I mean, why do we go ride a roller coaster, or why do we watch a TV show, or why do we do anything? Because we're bored, and we need something to do. Now, we could expand that and say, well, why did we pick one that's so horrific? And even though all of us on this panel have our challenges, and some more than others, I would still say that we were all extremely blessed in our lifetimes. And there are people that live truly horrible existences. I am constantly, Oklahoma City of all places, you wouldn't think so, but Oklahoma City happens to be the national hotspot for sex trafficking, and there's a lot of kids that are sex trafficked. And when I think about the lifetimes that they're living, and then that's what I do. I don't necessarily think, well, why did I choose this shit? Because I can see myself choosing this shit, but I think, well, why did they choose that shit? Because they're brave souls, and it moves people. I had a conversation with a lady this week that is basically driving herself into depression because of her feelings in the political arena. And I won't go into the exacts of it, but you'll figure it out as I go on just by my response, But what I said to her was, think about how many people have changed their thoughts at the way they look at things, have vowed to themselves never to do this or that, based on what they have seen someone else do, and I'm out of the political arena at this point, okay? Regardless, think about the horrific things that we witness, what we deem horrific. They're really amazing teaching opportunities, right? Because we see that what we deem as horrific, we see that and we go, oh shit, I don't ever want to do that to somebody. I don't ever want to cause somebody that pain. So all of those horrific things, or what we deem horrific, are all things that actually typically promote more peace from that than they do more of that, if you followed that and that makes any sense. Why would people come in and not have enough to eat? Well, that's another deep subject. There's plenty to eat. We just keep it away from them. But, somebody then is able to step in and give. And then how does that make that makes that person feel good for giving, and that makes that other person feel loved. Like yesterday, I only had 2 blankets to give, but I took 2 blankets to give to somebody who only had 1 blanket to sleep with. So now she has 3 blankets. And that made both of us feel really good, But what caused that? What caused that was not having electricity for days in sub-zero temperatures, So sometimes bad shit has to happen to bring out the good shit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, this book is really, I think it's really pushing all of us to really just kind of help relook and reframe and um, open our minds and our thoughts. Some of us a little harder than others, but I'm talking about me a little bit. Um, but part of like what this group is all about is going in and you know postulating and looking at things and once again not putting anybody down or not making anybody feel bad, right, wrong, whatever because of that. you know and I think that's why we've lasted so long is because we have that genuine love and everything for each other, and genuine wanting to help each other grow and learn and become the better versions of ourselves that we want to be. So, um, for me, this just deepens my desire more to even go within, and look at myself, at some of these things and how I look and how I perceive some things. And, because there are a lot of things I don't like going on out there. But, you know, if I can even stop and try and put myself in that position to look at it, and a lot of times I think I can, it helps me to look at, from a different perspective. And I agree with you, Catherine, that, um, there are times when I push to do more for somebody else because of what somebody's going through or the circumstances or whatever. And then it opens me up that much more to love. And going back to what the book is, love is basically the book's saying love is the key function of the driving of the things, and what really pushes things and gets us back up to that vibrational level that we want everything to be at. So for me, I this was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was out Ubering and stopped to get me a drink or something, and hate to admit it, used the restroom too because after driving, and I'm sure Catherine understands that. After a while, there are times when nature calls, and you just need to find the closest convenience store or something to. So, but I usually try to buy something just because I want to patronize, for allowing me to use their restroom, that kind of thought, because they don't have to. But somebody in line was, having a hard time trying to make the purchase. The card wasn't working and stuff. She was getting frustrated, so I think she went outside to talk to somebody in the car or get some money. So when I stepped up, because they put her stuff aside, I said, "How much is that going to be?" And they kind of told me. And I said, "Here, just put it on mine. You know, I'll pay for it. No problem. Just you know." And I said, just explain to her that it's paid for. And I walked out before she ever came back in. So that way she even had no clue that it was me. But that feeling that it gave me was like, you know, and I'm not bragging or anything. But I have to admit, it goes back to like what you're saying. It gave me a real sense of loving somebody that I didn't even know, just out of genuine love for their situation. Because I've been there before too, and at times I've had somebody do that for me, and you know, or the cashier might say, "Here, I'll take what you got," or something like that. So, you know, it kind of, now I'm going back to that feeling. And it's like, yeah, that was awesome. And why don't we operate on that length more than the fear or the panic or the, distrust or whatever, So, yeah, I think this book really is helping in that area.
It's good to see you all. Thank you very much. I love you. See you next week.
Well, We've had a lot of great thoughts here today. I loved what you were saying there, Catherine, about this we're eternal beings. So what else we have to do? I mean, I totally get that. And Dan, when you said, what's the need for this? My first thought was, what's the need for imagination? What's the need for movies? What's the need for books? What's the need for art? What's the need for hair color? I mean, what's the need for any of it?
What if it's just as simple as just because? Like, what if it was? And we're just thinking so far into it. It's just as simple as just because, like Catherine said, we're eternal beings. What else we got to do? Just because. Wouldn't that be crazy though?
Yeah, totally crazy. I mean, realistically, but that's kind of the point, I was watching another TV show. Of course, it's my downtime of the year. I watch a lot of TV this time of year. That's it. Anyway, we're watching The Good Place. You guys seen that? I know some of you've heard about that. Okay, so I'm in the season where it's like close to the end of all of the shows so far, and they finally get to heaven. And in heaven, everybody is bored out of their mind. They've like lost all of their capacity to think. They can't even formulate ideas. They're just going. They're just blah. Okay, everything's perfect and wonderful, and it's all blah. They're bored out of their freaking mind. And it isn't until they introduce a new thought into heaven that you can actually leave heaven if you want to. Then everybody's like, oh, okay, cool. We have excitement again, and it made me think about that. It's just like, okay, in this all-knowing, all-being, all-omnipotent, all-everything existence, where we just are up there floating around, blah, I mean, we already know everything, so what's the point, And so just like here on earth, we get bored. I mean, we get bored. So we watch movies and we watch television and we watch baloney reality show. I don't, but there's a lot of people that do. We play video games, we write books, we read books. I mean, all of those different things are just one aspect, one tiny little blip in all of the possibilities. And we get on here and we have these conversations. Why? Because we want to, just because. So, and how would we know, Dan? Like for your example of you notice that person in front of you who was struggling to pay for her items, or his. I didn't hear if you said it was a her or a him. And if you didn't have any idea of what that was like, you wouldn't have even thought to do that for that person, right? And so we have to understand the differences. We have to understand the contrast in order to know the contrast. So maybe that's all it really is. And maybe we are just one big dream of God that he's just thinking and we're the thoughts, and every one of us is one aspect of a thought, and everything that is in existence is just another aspect of a thought. I mean, if we are all energy, you get deeper and deeper down into the scientific evidence that we're all the same and we just think we're different. Maybe we are just a dream, just we're God's dream, and sometimes we're a nightmare, and sometimes we're a heavenly experience, and sometimes it's just like doesn't make any sense at all, and sometimes it's completely a rerun of the same thing over and over again. I mean, who knows? And I feel like that more than anything else probably makes the most sense, because then all the chaos makes sense. It's like, oh, it's because it can. I don't know. I mean, because otherwise what would be the point? And if we did look at ourselves as an eternal continua, just always here beings, yeah, I mean, as a human, we want to do a million different things. We just want to try something different, see something different, experience something different. So who's to say that God isn't exactly the same, just wants to experience everything in every way, shape, or form, and we just happen to be part of that. I don't know. This has been an interesting conversation. I love these books where we dig into this stuff that's just like completely, out there and it's like, what could it be? I imagine if we were like philosophy professors and we knew a whole bunch more of that philosophy stuff and what we'd be talking about. I like reading some of those things and talking about those things, but I don't even understand a lot of it. So I feel like we're the kindergarten version of that, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, guys, this has been a great chat. I know you guys have all had fun and we enjoy talking with you. And for those of you who are watching, if you find this stuff interesting, then by all means, click like on our video, whether we're on Facebook or whether on YouTube, and subscribe to our channel so you get updated each time we upload a new video. And if you would like to join this conversation, actually get in here and talk about the crazy stuff that we're talking about, then find us on our Facebook group. You can go to mindsetmasterycollective.com and that will show you a link to get into our Facebook group, or just search for Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook and you'll find us. And we'd love to have you join us. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week. And we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind.